I just read Chuck's book last week, and I agreed with about 90% of it.
You read the Faith?
No, God and Government.
Okay.
And I was surprised, actually, how much I agreed with it, because there you say how the main job of the church is to live it out, the little platoons, like what Shane's got, great stuff. But see, it's not an issue of whether or not we should engage moral evil or whether or not we should engage the polis as a whole. The question is it our primary job, and you even deny this, it's not the main job of the church to be running the government or to think that we're supposed to affect the government. That's not the main job. The main job is to live out the kingdom. And that comes as a secondary thing. And I guess my main objection would be this. I feel like sometimes what some Christians do, and if the shoe fits, wear it, but let's see, that we put the political cart before the kingdom horse. The bullseye is the kingdom, living it, getting my congregation to live 24/7 kingdom principles and all of its radicality, because that's very rarely done. If we get that done, I think we'll have a lot of clarity about how to engage the culture in a lot of ways, including politics. I'm not against that. But if we shoot at the politics, all the while the church isn't living the kingdom. You mentioned the book Unchurched this morning. It shows that the Christians in America differ very, very little from the broader American culture. It's almost indistinguishable. Well, here we are, a broken church, profoundly broken church, trying to fix the world. I say we should first take the log out of our own eye before we start taking the speck out of others' eye. Now, that doesn't mean we suspend all solidarity with prisoners. I love what you're doing with prisoners or with African Americans in the Civil War or with the oppressed. Enter into solidarity with them. You say, ouch. But that's different than saying we can resolve the complex issues of abortion or whether or not the U.S. should go to war in Iraq or
do you within your community, within your church, try to resolve whatever that means, resolve the issue of abortion? Are you modeling, are you living with that in a different way?
That our job is to sacrifice for the unborn, yes. Who you should vote for because of where they vote on that issue, no. And when I say let politics take care of itself, that's what I mean. I'm not saying ignore politics, but Augustine told an abbot one time, love God and do what you please. Because if you love God, everything else is going to follow. I would just say love God and vote as you please. Because if you're really loving God,
one thing I've read you say in response to some of your critics is that you're not saying. I don't want to lose my train of thought here, but this is not live radio. It's edited, so I can lose my train of thought if I feel like it. Sorry. Where is this? You have said that we narrow our idea of public engagement to political engagement. Yes. What I also hear you possibly doing is, and maybe the evangelical movement as a whole has been guilty of this, narrowing the idea of political engagement to electoral engagement. Because, I mean, again, when I asked a minute ago, is it an either or? When Chuck Colson talks about dealing with state legislatures to get good, faithful models, to get them implemented, to make things happen, that's not necessarily much. I mean, you're dealing with elected officials, but that's not about who you vote for, per se. It is about engagement in politics at a different level.
I agree. And Paul, there's precedent for that in Paul. When he's being arrested, he says, hey, by the way, I'm a citizen, and therefore I have a right not to be beaten. He's not against talking to political powers. But that's very different than thinking that we can resolve all the political issues, like we have any kind of special wisdom about that. I don't think following Jesus gives us any special wisdom about how to fix government.
I don't think you can leave your moral convictions behind when you go in the voting booth.
Of course not.
If you believe as I do, and as the Catholics teach in Evangelium Vitae, issued by John Paul II, that the defense of life is part of the gospel, then for me to go into a voting booth and vote against what is the central truth of my life, that is my commitment to Christ, is impossible. I can't be schizophrenic. So I think the duty is to say, we're not part of a political movement. That's what I said in God and Government. We aren't going to be beholden to a political party, but we are going to vote our convictions, and we're going to work for our convictions, and we're going to work for justice in the public square. And when I go into a voting booth, I not only look at the abortion issue transcendent, because to me it's part of the gospel, but I also look at defense of marriage. I look at the help for the poor. I look at people who do not promote justice, and we have 2.3 million people in prison today because we have had discriminatory sentencing laws, all kinds of injustices. I won't vote for people who support that because I was in prison. I won't vote for people who will take human life. So I don't see how you can separate it.
You can't, but you see, you and Jim Wallace, for example, have the exact same convictions. He would agree with everything you just said, but he would vote very, very different. Can you acknowledge that he's passionate, just as you are, about justice and poverty and criminals, but the way he translates it is very, very different. That's all I'm saying. And so don't call one of these Christian. Leave room for the ambiguity. That's all I'm saying.
I would take Jim Wallace as a sincere Christian. I know him. He loves the Lord. There's no question about that. We have some profound disagreements.
Yes.
But he is more activist about being engaged in politics than is whatever succeeds the moral majority today. His latest book, which is out, is Join the Democratic Party in order to get justice.
But the point
he's explicit about it. It is.
Really? I haven't read his latest
a lot of
book,
directions
so
we could go from there.
Shane.
But I just wanted to say that I think one of the biggest questions that is the idea of political embodiment. How do we live out our politics? And what I love about Jesus is he wasn't just offering a political platform or a nuanced political agenda, but he is embodying who he is. He's born a baby refugee in the middle of a genocide, lives struggle, and so I think part of what we need is we need new political heroes and sheroes, which, like, for me, Mother Teresa is one of those. I worked with her in Calcutta. I learned from her, and she's just done so much to the cause of decreasing abortions and honoring life, from the cradle to the grave. But it wasn't because she went around wearing a abortion is murder shirt. Like she said, if you don't want your baby, you can give it to me. Yes. And that has integrity to it. You can't argue with that. Even Bill Clinton, not known for his pro-lifeness, invites her to speak at his prayer breakfast. And it just radiates that hope. And to me, that's what we've lost. Because I do want to decrease abortion. I'm pro-life, which is why I don't want abortions and I don't want militarism and war. And yet, like, that also means that, like, I have an obligation, to figure out what to do when a 14-year-old girl on my block gets pregnant, which happened, and how do we embody a different future together with her? And I think it's the same with the prisons. Like Dr. Martin Luther King said so well. He said, we're called to be the good Samaritan and lift our neighbor out of the ditch on the road to Jericho. But after you lift so many people out of the ditch, you start to say maybe the whole road to Jericho needs to be reimagined, right? And when we have when you have 2.3 million people in prison, 1 in every 3 African American men, and those prisoners are, producing $700 million worth of goods a year, half of it going to the U.S. military. Like, this is a problem. Like, we have to start to rethink, like, what's happened. And so I think that's where the movement of justice that affects political change happens with Dr. King and throughout church history, powerful movements of people of faith. So I think that idea that we allow the integrity of our lives and of our communities to radiate hope is part of where we're missing. Because you can have all the right answers and great rhetoric, but I think that what we're really hungry for is a Christianity that has substance that people can wrap their hands around, that embodies the gospel, that's good news to the poor.